Hello, my little tanlings. Welcome back.
Start over.
Hello? No, I won't start over.
That's
Let
not
me try
what
that
they're called.
again. Hello,
What?
my little tanlings. Welcome
They're
back.
called Aetherheads.
Hello,
not
my little
tanlings.
aetherheads.
There we go.
Welcome back.
Can you read the chapter title for us?
Absolutely, I can. This is Aetheral Space 17.21, Aclima's heart-pounding, blood-pumping special training day.
I love how she says it like Pim in the title. Anytime I see more than one exclamation point, it's just Pim.
Wave my arms in the air. So exciting!
So exciting! It's my heart-pounding, blood-pumping special training day!
Yeah, I don't know, Pim.
Yeah, I don't know about this, Pim. I can't do it.
Why don't you just
Charlie.
help with the training, Charlie?
Anyway, this isn't about Smiling Friends. This is about an Aetheral Space chapter in theory. Shall we?
Absolutely.
I want to become stronger. With those words, Aclima had finally thrown away what remained of her pride. She had stood before Zephyr Pandershi, that disgusting, arrogant man, and begged for his help. There should be a comma after disgusting. Not to give her an opportunity, not to give her advice. She had begged him to make her stronger, to make her a warrior. Aclima was a mediocre person. She had understood that for a long time now. Her skill was rote, the result of repetition without any true affinity. The modicum of strength she possessed, too, was just the inevitable result of someone put through her training. Nothing about it truly belonged to her. She had no claim to it. From the moment she'd been born, Aclima had been a puppet dancing in the hands of others. Balte Kojiro, Gretchen Hale, a toy Musashi. The closest she could get to breaking free of those strings was to willingly hand them over to another. Now she danced for Nyane, another man she despised, helping him with a cause she didn't believe in at all. Why? Self-satisfaction, and truly nothing else. She wanted the opportunity to bring her blade down upon a toy Musashi. Was it even vengeance she desired anymore? Her father had never loved her, didn't love her, would never have loved her. What would saving him have changed? It could never even have happened in the first place. She didn't have the requisite strength to save herself, let alone someone on her father's level. No. Yes. She wanted revenge. It was all she wanted. It was the only thing she could still fit inside her heart. The toy Musashi, who had saved her and fooled her and betrayed her, needed to die by her hand. She had no other aspirations left. I want to become stronger. I want to become stronger. I want to become stronger. She wanted to bite the hand that fed her. She wanted to tear it apart with her teeth. She wanted nothing to remain but bone and gristle. Whatever it took to reach that point, she no longer had any right to complain. She would get rid of a toy Musashi, and then she would disappear herself. The poison in her heart would allow nothing less. So she stood before Zephyr Pandershi, and she spoke the incantation aloud. I want to become stronger. And Zephyr Pandershi just smiled. Sure, he said, with all the kindness of a devil. You did well to swallow your pride, said Oe, sitting on a bench at the side of the training room. Black brush balanced across her knees. Not everyone's capable of that, even when it becomes absolutely necessary. Aclima swung Beelzebub with all her strength, cleaving the wolf things that lunged at her in twain. They twitched and squealed on the floor before decomposing into a red slurry that flowed through the air back into Oe's aether armament. Her life-painting abilities were perfectly suited to setting up training scenarios like this. Pandershi was already working on something to give her the boost she needed, and in the meantime he'd asked her to train alongside the members of his Unseelie. It wasn't as bad as she'd expected, to be honest. Unlike the other members of Darkstar, like Nyane and McCoy, there was a clear sense of humanity to the Unseelie. These were people who could be spoken to. Your movements aren't as good as before, Oe frowned, standing up from the bench. What's the problem? As she approached, the training environment changed, the rocky expanse around Aclima fading into a stark white plain. She looked down at the sterile floor. Is this... she mumbled, before starting again, more clearly. I'm still not sure if this is the right way. Becoming stronger? Oe frowned. No, Aclima shook her head. Trusting Pandershi. At those words, the frown on Oe's face shifted into a reassuring smile. Ah, she chuckled. I understand where you're coming from, then, Lady Aclima. I won't lie and say Lord Pandershi doesn't give off a... overbearing impression. But I'll tell you right now that you can trust him with your life. Girl. Didn't he literally lie to them about who destroyed the ward? Aclima looked up at the taller woman. Do you? Of course. Oe slung her black brush over her shoulder. I owe it to him, after all. When Aclima raised a questioning eyebrow, Oe continued. Are you familiar with Monadere? She asked. We used to be part of the UAP's Central Governing Council, until the colorless light struck our planet and rendered it uninhabitable. Our nation collapsed from there. I was born on the Monadere refugee fleet, a huge group of starships that had been searching the galaxy for a planet suitable to be New Monadere for, well, decades now. She took a step back and threw her brush up, painting several avian creatures into existence. They circled Aclima, screeching as she stood with sword in hand, ready to counter the second they made a move. Why so long? Aclima asked, slowly turning on the spot to keep the birds in sight. There are plenty of planets out there, right? Right, Oe nodded. But I suppose they wanted a perfect, true New Monadere, a world that can replace the one in their most precious memories, the sort of place that doesn't exist anywhere. That's... Aclima searched for the right word and failed to find it. Sad. One of the birds swooped in, and Aclima swung Beelzebub, crushing the tiny body against the flat side of the large blade. Oe nodded in approval. A lot of people have broken away from the fleet over the years, found their own new home, Oe continued. But my family were true believers. They were there for the long haul. And then one day, there was an incident. Aclima did her best to keep listening as she repelled the bird's attacks, but Oe's voice had grown distant and soft. She had to strain to hear over the squawks and shrieks. It was something with the engines. Our ship ended up adrift, lost between stars, 10,000 people just waiting to slowly die, Oe murmured. We were in weird space, so nobody was willing to risk coming to help us. We were just refugees anyway. There wouldn't have been any benefit for them. This time, when the next bird came in, Aclima caught it with her hand. Squeezing, she reduced it to paste, before looking back over her shoulder at Oe. What happened? She asked, mouth dry. We were out there for years in the dark, Oe said distantly. They tried to make a proper thing of it, keep their society together, but it's the hopelessness that gets people, not lack of food or water. Knowing they'll never taste fresh air again, knowing they'll never set foot anywhere but the ship again, it breaks people. Cults started springing up. The captain clamped down in response. People just started... By the end, there were suicides every day. Food issues. There were only around 10 of us left when... Oe choked back the last word, and Aclima turned away from her training, raising her hands. Sorry, I didn't mean to... Pay attention, Oe said sharply, her anguish suddenly gone. The human before Aclima had stepped back into the territory of a warrior, and Aclima did the same, swinging around and repelling a set of talons that had been aimed for the back of her head. There were only around 10 of us when Lord Pandershi came to save us. Oe finished her story, much more composed, her manner reminding Aclima of a toy Musashi. The area of weird space we were in was among the most volatile. Everyone else said rescue was impossible. Everyone else gave up, but not him. Zephyr Pandershi is a man who will do whatever he sets his mind on, regardless of whether or not it's impossible. As Aclima sliced apart the final bird, Oe took a deep breath. He took me in and raised me as his own, without obligation or reward, she said seriously. I promise you this, if nothing else, Aclima. You can trust Zephyr Pandershi. The boss? Songshu asked, catching one of Aclima's punches directly on the jaw. Oh yeah, he's a real son of a bitch. Don't trust him. Aclima blinked, her knuckles pressed against Songshu's chin. She hadn't been intending to seriously injure her sparring partner, true, but that had been a real punch she'd thrown just now. This tiny girl, a grown woman only the same size as Aclima herself, if not slightly shorter, had just taken it like it was nothing. In fact, Aclima's hand ached like she'd just punched a brick wall. She slowly withdrew it, rubbing her knuckles. Songshu's it should be Songshu's, not Songshua. Words, too, had been unexpected. That's not what Oe said, Aclima mumbled, taking a step back across the training mat. She promised I could trust him. Songshu shrugged, before cracking her neck and beginning to hop on one foot, fists in a ready position. Well, she's got that whole daddy issues thing going on. I don't really get that. My dad was a real son of a bitch, too. But that's the way it is. I love her, but I'm not going to pretend like she's objective or anything, you know? So you don't trust him? Aclima asked, thrusting her fist forward. I don't know if I'd go that far, Songchu said, easily blocking Aclima's punch. I mean, I trust him to pay my wages, and he's been good for that so far. All I'm saying is he's definitely the kind of guy to touch himself to his own reflection, right? Right. It was a crude way of saying it, but Aclima couldn't actually say that Songchu was wrong there. Zephyr Pandershi was definitely a man in love with himself. It radiated from every word he said, every face he made, like he was dedicating each and every aspect of his life to self-aggrandizement. That sort of confidence must have been nice. I mean, I haven't been here that long, Songchu said, throwing a punch that sent Aclima skidding back across the floor. So take it with a grain of salt, you know? Pandershi had Oe invite me here to be the template for his whole clone body thing, and he paid me to stick around afterwards, so that's basically the extent of our relationship. It's a cushy gig. You want my advice? Aclima lowered her trembling arms. What? Vengeance and all that bullshit? Songchu waved a dismissive hand. Not worth it. Find a comfy spot of your own and cling to it as long as you can. That's how you lead a happy life. Not everyone's cut out to be a warrior or whatever. A comfy spot? Aclima looked down at her hand, the hand that had punched Songchu. The knuckles were bloody. They hurt. No. It felt like, until she'd finally paid that man back, all her wounds would just keep on hurting. You're interested in my sword, aren't you? Terada Takeo smirked, looking up from the bench. Would you like to hear more about it? Aclima glanced down. She'd just been in the middle of downing a bottle of water. Her eyes flicked down to the sword that gave Unseelie Sword his title. Well, what was apparently a sword. There was a long rectangular box strapped to Terada's hip, with chains wrapped tightly around it. Aclima had been told that inside that box was a sheath, and inside that sheath was a sword. But she hadn't seen it with her own eyes. What? She said, surprised to be suddenly addressed. Until now, Terada had just watched in silence. Oh, that's okay. Thanks. Terada was silent for a good long moment. The name of my sword is Jikininki, he said. Though, to call it my sword is perhaps a marker of disrespect. Methinks I am more its human, the instrument through which it exerts its hunger upon the world, and it is a hungry one. Were I not holding back this demonic sword even now, it is like to run, I seem likely, to run wild and devour us all
like
whole. Ah, but the seal holds. Just barely. Oh, said Aclima. Okay. It's one of the great works of the Maker Guild's swordsmith, Terada went on. You're familiar with him, aren't you? He's a man of flamboyant soul who takes his blades as his brides. Quite scandalous, don't you think? Although perhaps that divine spark of madness is what gives his armaments their potency. I've supped upon the same before. Although my lunacy is that of the battlefield itself. A finer vintage indeed. Aclima looked away. This is just what happens when I try to talk to women. Considering his blades are his brides, Terada rubbed his chin, smirking. I'm sure the swordsmith must see me as the worst kind of homewrecker. But not even the most radiant saint could have resisted Jikininki's song. A beast of the apocalypse that wishes to devour the world. What finer partner could there be for me? If that detective hadn't interfered, I would surely hold Jikininki's sisters too. But no matter. One calamity alone will serve, perchance. Absolutely, Aclima said distantly. An instrument of malice that devours everything of this world, even Aether itself. Terada chuckled, running a finger down the length of the box. What a dark glory. It's no surprise that good Maxim took an interest in it and reached out to me. Men are tempted by sin, didn't you know? It truly is a rotten world we live in, don't you think? And yet, at the same time, a garden of delights. And I'm still hungry. Aclima didn't really get why Terada was talking about being hungry when he'd been using a garden metaphor, but she just kept nodding politely. After a moment, though, aren't you supposed to be training me? She asked. I need more of him immediately. This is my new favorite character. Hey, you said this was 7 pages. It's 10 now. What happened?
I did not say that. I said 10.
What the hell?
You misheard me, is what happened.
I'm getting gaslighted. He said 7.
No, I didn't say 7.
It had been an exhausting morning. Oh, wait, actually, popcorn. I'm tired.
It had been an exhausting morning. Oe had put Aclima through her paces, and just landing punches on Songshu had been exhausting in itself. After he'd finished talking about himself, Treader actually started sparring with her too, but that had felt more like a break than anything else. No. Aclima guessed that Jikaniki must be a really good eighth round.
He's getting hard carried.
By the sword he doesn't use.
Oh my god.
She downed another bottle of water, sitting back on the bench, her slick with sweat. To tell the truth, she didn't feel any stronger than before. She just felt more tired. It wasn't as if she'd been slacking on training until now anyway. She'd worked hard to fit into her role as the Supreme Heir. It was just that the gap between herself and Atoy Mizazi was so wide that no amount of training could fill it. He was just a fundamentally different sort of creature to her. Aclima was a mere human, and those she wanted to reach were warriors. That was the abyss she had to cross. Let me get this voice on. And take a sip.
This guy's like 200 some years old, right?
Yeah. But he's also like a robot man. Robot bug, horror, scary man. Your core is hatred. Aclima nearly jumped out of her skin at the sound of that grating voice, and even when she turned to see the speaker, it didn't help much. One look at that face looming high above her, immediately brought back memories of the banquet, memories of one of the monsters that had tried to kill her that night. Maxim, the man known as Unseelie Gun, looked down at Aclima with the teeth that took up most of his face bearing a perpetual grimace. The Hive of Malkuth had left their mark on this massive man. It was as if his features had been warped into insecthood, then forcefully pulled halfway back to humanity along a different route. That massive coat and wide-brimmed hat were for disguising the grotesque features that had resulted more than anything else. He looked down at her, and when he spoke again his words were sharp and harsh, resentment threatening to burst free from every syllable. I asked you a question, girl. Had he? It certainly hadn't sounded like a question. Everything this man said sounded like a dire statement, or at most a vicious command. A questioning tone with softness beyond what he was capable of. But Connor wasn't about to say that to his face. Yeah, she said, looking up at him with wide eyes. My eighth core is hatred. Why? Maxim straightened up. The director is ready for you, he said, ignoring her question. Come with me. With that, he turned and began to deceive her. With that, he turned and began to stride out the training room, ignoring Aclima's question. His stride was as wide as he was tall. Aclima had to scurry to keep up as they moved out into the hallway. A pair of Sealy Rangers who'd been standing guard offered Maxim a salute as they passed, but he ignored them too. He didn't even turn his head in their direction.
It's like the fucking Toji walking past now, yeah?
I heard there's a guy who got turned into a bug by the Hive. I think it was like really pathetic. You're not Maxim. With that, he turned and began to stride out of the training room, ignoring Aclima's question. Oh yeah, he didn't even turn his head in their direction. Aclima kept sneaking glances up at Maxim as they walked. To tell the truth, she hadn't heard of him before coming to Nerdmoots, but she'd picked up some scraps of information over the last couple of days. Those had made her wonder just how in the world she hadn't known of him already. After all, this was the man who had faced the forces of 3 separate Supremes. This was the man who had broken free of the Hive of Malkuth's control through sheer force of will. This was the man who had created the infamous anti-Aether technique, Der Freischutz. My core is hatred also, Maxim suddenly hissed, pulling Aclima out of observation. Tell me, girl, what is it you hate? Aclima thought about it only for a moment. Toy Musashi, I hate Toy Musashi. That's why I'm doing this. I need to take my revenge on him. Insipid! Maxim nearly spat the word. And insufficient. So specific at first will quickly fade. You'll find no strength in it. Aclima frowned. What do you mean? As I said. He offered no more than that. He's so angry, even as their work stretched on in silence, occupied only by the thumps of his heavy footsteps. That strange man Harry Phantasm passed by with his scantily clad entourage on his way to God knows where, and offered them a cheery nod. Just like with the Sealy Rangers, though, Maxim ignored him. He's so rude. Would you ignore people if you were in his position?
If I was as cool as Maxim, yeah, I'd have to aura farm.
Aclima did the same. Her eyes were still on Maxim, and her frown was deepening into a scowl. When it became clear he intended to say no more, she opened her own mouth instead. Well, she asked, what is it you hate then that's so much better? I? Maxim chuckled, an awful alien sound like a warped electric bell. Aclima winced to hear it. That sound contained nothing but bitterness and barely buried malice. My hatred is reserved for that which dictates the shape of this world. Look! He raised a clawed and wizened hand, and sparks of purple crackled between the digits. It infests even me. Aether the Infector, Aether the Rapist, loathsome Aether, vile Aether. It is a power humanity should never have held, and we have used it to make evil gods of ourselves. Behold the world of suffering and strife the ancient idiots have created. Aether. This time he actually spat the word. This my hate is reserved for, he growled. This alone.
I just realized something thematically with this speech.
What?
First of all, great character speech. Second of all, Aether strengthens and reinforces stuff, right? So when everyone's using Aether, Aether is literally reinforcing the shape of the world. Well, did you intend that, or am I reaching?
Of course I intended it.
I feel so smart now. 10,000 IQ. What the fuck?
He looked down towards Aclima once again. This time she could see the tiny red dots of what might have been his eyes, deep in the darkness beneath the brim of his hat. They burned with a resentment cultured over 200 years of life. I am from the world Walden, he continued. Whenever it pleases them, the whores of Aether come to torment us. It happened for the first time at the beginning of this vile farce, and it has happened over and over again since then. Even your father, Brat, even he came to our forest and butchered our champions, named our finest disappointing and threw them aside like trash. He too was scum. But make no mistake, Aether guided his eye, and Aether bolstered his fist. Aclima said nothing. How could she? The man who had barely spoken before was now letting the words pour forth without end, and more than a few of them were packed with scorn for her. She had the awful feeling that, if she responded unwisely, the hatred within Maxim would boil over and he would forget himself. I have seen more of what Aether has wrought than any man alive. Maxim clenched his fist. Thus do I resent. Thus do I despise. My magic bullet. I have devoted my life to obliterating the eyesore that is Aether, and yet my only medium is Aether itself. It infests all, and so my hatred extends to all. That is what it means to hate, girl. To hate. Hate. Hate.
Does he act normal around non-Aether users? He's like, yo, what's up, Brian?
Hey guys, what's going on? As the cold rage poured from Maxim's mouth as mist, the doors before them slid open, and the one who had been waiting there smiled. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, the distinctive hair and arrogance of Zephyr Pandershi. He narrowed his eyes, inspecting his specimens. Miss Aclima, he said. Splendid. Everything here is ready. How about you? Aclima took a deep breath and stepped forward, Maxim's venomous words still spreading through her brain. Her hatred was her strength, she had known that. But she had been thinking of that hatred like a human, merely tapping into what was in reality her only source of power, imagining she could find it somewhere else. No more. If humans and warriors truly were two different things, then there was only one way for Aclima to become a Toy Musazi's equal. She just had to stop being human. Yeah, she said, her voice steady. I'm ready.
That was so good. There was so much character packed into that.
I'm glad you liked it.
I forgot you could write characters that are compelling. I'm kidding.
Jesus.
No,
he's so sundry.
Compelling is the wrong word, because you actually do write a lot of compelling characters. It's just you've had so many characters whose quirks like lean more towards being funny. I forgot you could do like the edgy well too. That was really fun.
Don't get me talking about Aether.
Let me tell you how much I
Two
hate
drinks in.
drinking the Aether Kool-Aid.
Aether the whore.
You know this guy is retweeting shit on not retweeting, sorry, reposting shit on Facebook all the time with skeletons and motorcycles. Don't bring that fucking Aether around my house. I'll kill you, bitch. What was I doing again? Oh yeah, we have questions. I have some too, but I don't know if we'll get to mine in this one. We'll see how many we have.
Let's have a look at these questions, boy.
I'm trying to get to them. Sorry, every time we get to this section, I always go to the Aetheral Space roleplay server first. I'm like, oh, whoops.
He loves to roleplay, what can I say?
Oh my god, we have a lot of questions to go through. Okay. First off, Lan asks, would Chrono Dissonance work on Arcana automatics?
If it's an Aether user automatic that's infusing itself, probably not. It would work like a normal person, but if it's not got Aether, yeah, there's no reason why not.
Mm. Well, most Arcane automatics don't have Aether, right? Isn't the Moon Luna an exception?
Yeah.
Rockshark asks, would Cadman be able to use the Prince if he copied a former host Aether rather than the current host?
No, Prince isn't there anymore.
Interesting. Some mysterious handsome guy asks, how did the dragon go blind?
Well, this guy obviously got hit by the reading comprehension Aether ability, because we saw this in the last chapter. He got his thumbs dug into his eyes.
Oh, yeah. Rockshark asks, why have Ruth Blaine not recorded more armor in her Aether after the Revolutionary set?
She's got a pretty good sort of set of armors. They pretty much fit the niches she needs.
I love how her new armors is like, what if I just put more armors on at the same time?
She's fusing them, yeah. I am God.
I assume, correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume part of that is her training and fighting. Like, if she had just tried to do that from the jump, she might have exploded herself.
Yeah.
Like Deku had to prepare his body or whatever.
And she also got a better understanding of, like, how it all works and everything. Like, oh, I can just put these together and fuse these abilities using Revolutionary as sort of the glue.
Yeah, she got a little bit of that with Direwolf, we saw. And then
yeah, well, that's how they all work.
To the extreme. Yeah. Rockshark asks...
Basically, the way I see it is like Digivolution, in a way. We've got the three base ones, which are Direwolf, Revolutioner, and Noblesse. And
No, it's Skeletal, Noblesse.
Yes, absolutely, yeah, absolutely right, sorry.
And then Direwolf she got by doing Skeletal, I think.
It's more like fusions, actually. It's not like Digivolution at all. So Direwolf is Revolutioner plus Skeletal.
Yeah.
Monarch is Noblesse plus Revolutioner. And then moving up from there, so Emperor is all three together.
What was really interesting is previously I thought the way Revolutionary worked is she essentially gave the strength of her Aether to someone else, but we learned it's actually just, it doesn't take from her base because she uses it to add to her own.
Yes.
Which is interesting how that works. I'm curious about the mechanics behind it. But regardless...
I think I mentioned, basically the way it does an Aether burn, but transfers the damage of the Aether burn to the armor rather than her.
Understood. Rockshark asks, can you force the Prince onto someone like Edgar did, or was that exclusive to him?
Anyone can do that. If I had the Prince, I could just grab your face and now you have the Prince. Good luck.
Like fucking
I'll be dying first.
The orcs in Battle for Mordor or whatever. It's like, you serve the Prince now.
Like, I'll be dying first. Good luck.
Darkstar the Prince. Doesn't matter, really. Lan asks, why does Nine like waiting so much?
It's the human urge to look at people and be like, he doesn't know. Because he likes waiting once he's set up the dominoes, and he's like, you fucking idiots.
Lan asked, and I know this is an ASRP character, but in the general canon, have people tried to copy/adapt Supreme Shine?
Oh, absolutely. You would get, I imagine some people in Tria might have tried to do it with mixed results in some
I assume it usually goes badly, like you irradiate yourself, because it was like his tick, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah, it came about because a fusion of his tick and armaments he could have created for him and his own Aether ability add-on to it.
And he only really survived because he learned he could just reinforce himself while doing it. I assume most people just like irradiate themselves.
Yeah. I mean, it did... it's possible that it is eventually what killed him as well.
I feel like you could get around if you had an Aether ability that like stabilized or prevented your cells from changing and then slapped radiation on top.
Because he did die of like super cancer, and everyone was like, "Oh, Gene Tyrant obviously like put a virus in him," but he was throwing nuclear punches his whole life, so maybe.
I thought he died because Edgar did some bullshit to him.
Yeah, he like intensified the existing illness he had. He infused that illness with Aether to supercharge it, basically, and that finished him off.
Oh. All right, there's many more questions, but let's end it there for the sake of time, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Bye.